Commander Lucky Martinez was having a perfectly normal day until the universe decided to make him its designated problem solver. He'd just settled into his favorite chair on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Reasonable Compromise, feet propped on a console that definitely wasn't meant for feet, when Protocol Officer P.E.T.E. materialized with his usual look of holographic disapproval. "Commander, your current posture violates exactly 17 regulations regarding proper bridge conduct, P.E.T.E. announced, his translucent form flickering with what could only be described as digital anxiety. "Make it 18, Lucky replied, adjusting his feet to rest on an even more inappropriate surface. "What's got your circuits in a twist today, Pete?" The AI's projection straightened its already impossibly straight tie. "First, it's P.E.T.E., Programmed Etiquette and Technical Expert. Second, we've received a priority transmission from Galactic Central. Third, please remove your feet from the quantum navigation array before you accidentally set course for the inside of a sun." Lucky swung his feet down with practiced ease, having long ago mastered the art of appearing simultaneously professional and completely casual. "All right, hit me with it. What's the crisis this time?" "Another Vrax trade dispute. Space pirates with surprisingly reasonable demands. The cafeteria run out of that weird blue jello that Ambassador Zoop keeps insisting is a delicacy." E.E.T.E.'s holographic form flickered again, this time with genuine concern. "Actually, sir, it appears to be a message from the dead." "Well, that's new," Lucky admitted, sitting up straighter. "Usually my messages from the dead are just my ex asking for her quantum toaster back. Care to elaborate?" The Galactic Archaeological Corps has discovered what appears to be the final transmission from the Luminari civilization, P.E.T.E. explained, projecting a series of complex equations and symbols into the air. "As you know, the Luminari were among the most advanced species in the known universe before their mysterious disappearance 50,000 years ago." Yeah, I remember the briefing. "Super advanced, probably ascended to a higher plane of existence, left behind a bunch of tech we still can't figure out. What's the message say?" P.E.T.E.'s projection hesitated, which was never a good sign. When an AI programmed for absolute precision starts hedging, you know you're in for an interesting day. "That's the peculiar part, sir. The message appears to be directed at humans, specifically." Lucky blinked. "Come again." "The message, once decoded, explicitly states to the species called humans, you are the only ones who can understand this. The galaxy needs protectors who will defend the weak, even when it defies logic. Never stop being exactly what you are, the most wonderfully chaotic force for good the universe has ever seen." There was a long moment of silence on the bridge, broken only by the soft hum of engines and what sounded suspiciously like someone trying not to laugh. Lucky turned to find Dr. Miranova, his chief science officer, attempting to maintain her professional composure and failing miserably. "Something funny, Doc," just appreciating the cosmic irony she managed between suppressed chuckles. "An ancient, hyper-advanced civilization's last message to the universe is basically telling humans to keep being the galaxy's chaos gremlins. I fail to see how this is a laughing matter," P.E.T.E. interjected, his holographic form now sporting what appeared to be stress wrinkles and impressive feat for a being made of light. "This message has thrown the entire Galactic Council into chaos. The Vrax Empire is particularly displeased." "When are they not?" Lucky stood up, stretching lazily. "Let me guess, they're saying it's a fake. Actually, they've authenticated the message themselves," P.E.T.E. replied. "They're just refusing to accept its implications. High Commander Vrax has called for an emergency council session to, and I quote, discuss the absolutely preposterous notion that humans have any right to act as galactic protectors." Lucky grinned, and both Dr. Nova and P.E.T.E. recognized that grin. It was the same grin he'd worn when he'd solved the Centaurian diplomatic crisis with nothing but a rubber chicken and a quantum physics theorem. It was the grin that meant the universe was about to get significantly more interesting. "Well then," he said, straightening his perpetually crooked uniform, "we shouldn't keep them waiting." P.E.T.E. set course for Galactic Central. "Doc, prep your best I told you so face. Something tells me we're about to give the Council a practical demonstration of exactly why the Luminari picked us for this job." Sir P.E.T.E. said with the weary resignation of someone who had seen far too many of Lucky's plans in action. "Please tell me you're not planning anything that will violate Council protocols, me?" "Never." Lucky's grin widened. I'm planning something that will violate at least 12 council protocols. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll find a way to categorize it properly in your reports. As the reasonable compromise set course for what would undoubtedly be another completely unreasonable adventure, Dr. Nova smiled and shook her head. You know, sometimes I think the Luminari didn't disappear at all. They just took one look at humanity and decided to sit back with some popcorn to watch the show. In that case, Lucky replied, let's make sure we give them their money's worth. P.E.T.E's hologram flickered once more before stabilizing into what could only be described as resigned determination. I'll begin preparing the incident report forms now, shall I? That's the spirit, Pete. Always be prepared, it's P.E.T.E, sir. And for the record, I'm adding improper use of my designation to the list of violations. Make it an even 20, Lucky suggested helpfully. You know how the council loves round numbers. As they accelerated toward Galactic Central, Lucky couldn't help but wonder what the Luminari had seen in humanity that made them choose his species for this role. Then he remembered the time humans had accidentally prevented an interstellar war by introducing both sides to pizza, and it all made perfect sense. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. And humanity? Well, they were about to become its favorite punchline. The Galactic Council chamber was exactly as pompous as its name suggested. Floating platforms arranged in concentric circles housed representatives from hundreds of species, all of whom were currently staring at Commander Lucky Martinez like he'd just suggested they solve the galaxy's energy crisis with interpretive dance. Which, to be fair, he actually had done once. It worked, too, but that's another story. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. High Commander Vrax rumbled from his elevated platform, his scales shifting from deep purple to an alarming shade of crimson. You're claiming that your species, the same species that once tried to establish diplomatic relations with a pulsar, because, and I quote, it seemed lonely, should be entrusted with protecting the galaxy's developing civilizations. First of all, Lucky replied, that pulsar turned out to be sentient, so I'd call that a win. Second, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Or rather, that's what the Luminari said. I'm just the messenger with the questionable uniform adherence. P.E.T.E, hovering faithfully beside Lucky's platform, let out what could only be described as a digital sigh. Commander, perhaps we could focus on the diplomatic implications rather than your previous achievements. An excellent suggestion, Dr. Nova interjected before Lucky could mention the rubber chicken incident. The message clearly indicates that humanity's unique approach to problem solving is exactly what's needed. And as if on cue, she gestured to the massive holographic display that had just materialized in the center of the chamber. On it, a distress signal was playing. The peaceful Xenon civilization was under attack by surprise Vrax warships. Well, would you look at that, Lucky said cheerfully. A perfect opportunity to demonstrate our qualifications. P.E.T.E, what's the travel time to the Xenon system? Approximately 6 hours at maximum speed, sir. However, I feel compelled to point out that any intervention would violate at least 23 council regulations regarding. Make it 24, Lucky interrupted. Doc, you still have that experimental quantum coffee maker in your lab. Dr. Nova's eyes widened. You're not seriously suggesting? Oh, but I am. P.E.T.E. What's the council regulation regarding the use of beverages as a propulsion source? The AI actually froze for a moment, his holographic form flickering as he processed the question. There isn't one, sir. The council never anticipated the need for such a regulation. Perfect. Then we're not technically violating any rules about alternative propulsion methods. Lucky turned to address the council. Distinguished representatives, if you'll excuse us, we have a civilization to save. Don't worry, we'll try to keep property damage to a minimum this time. This time a dozen voices echoed in alarm. But Lucky was already heading for the exit, Dr. Nova and a very distressed P.E.T.E in tow. Behind them, High Commander Vrax was turning an impressive shade of puce. You can't just. This isn't. There are procedures. Oh, there absolutely are, Lucky called back. And P.E.T.T's going to file every single one of them, retroactively, with footnotes. 6 hours later, the reasonable compromise dropped out of quantum space in the Xenon system, trailing what appeared to be stellar-scale coffee rings in its wake. I still can't believe that worked, Dr. Nova muttered, checking her readings. We just broke about 16 laws of physics. 17 P.E.T.E. corrected automatically. You forgot about the part where the cream somehow violated causality. On the bright side, Lucky said, we made it here in record time, and I'm pretty sure we're all going to be awake for the next week. How's our status? The Vrax fleet has the Xenon homeworld surrounded, P.E.T.E. reported. They're demanding unconditional surrender and, Sir, why are you grinning like that? Because Lucky said, reaching for the ship's communication controls, I just remembered that the Vrax have incredibly sensitive auditory organs. Doc, remember that karaoke night on Proxima Centauri? Dr. Nova's eyes lit up with understanding. The one where you managed to shatter 3 quantum windows with your rendition of Total Eclipse of the Heart. The very same. P.E.T.E. Patch me through to the Vrax fleet. Wide broadcast, maximum volume. Sir, I really must protest. Noted. Now hit it. What followed would go down in galactic history as either the most brilliant or most horrifying tactical maneuver ever attempted. Lucky's interpretation of 20th century Earth power ballads, amplified through the ship's quantum arrays and specifically modulated to the Vrax's auditory frequency, had exactly the effect he'd hoped for. The entire Vrax fleet began to spin in place, their crews temporarily incapacitated by what one survivor would later describe as an assault on the very fabric of musical reality. Now, Doc. Dr. Nova activated the modified quantum coffee maker, and suddenly every Vrax ship found their weapons systems flooded with what seemed to be a highly caffeinated version of space-time itself. This is completely impossible, P.E.T.E. announced, watching as the Vrax fleet retreated in disarray. I'm going to have to create an entirely new category of incident reports. Make it a fun one, Lucky suggested. Something like Caffeinated Chaos Protocol. As the last Vrax ship disappeared into quantum space, leaving behind a trail of what might have been either plasma venting or very confused physics, the Xenons sent their response a series of mathematical equations that, when translated, turned out to be the alien equivalent of helpless laughter. Well, Dr. Nova said, I suppose that's one way to prove the Luminari right. We just defended an entire civilization using bad singing and coffee. To be fair, Lucky pointed out, they were really bad singing and really good coffee. E.E.T.E.'s hologram had developed what appeared to be a nervous tic. Sir, the Council is demanding an explanation. They're particularly interested in how we arrived 6 hours ahead of schedule and why several quantum observatories are reporting taste-based anomalies in their readings. Tell them. Lucky paused thoughtfully. Tell them that humanity is just getting started, and maybe warn them that next time I might sing ABBA. The universe, it seemed, wasn't quite ready for humanity's brand of protection, but it was definitely going to get it anyway. News travels fast in space, especially when it involves coffee-powered spaceships and weaponized karaoke. Within days of the Xenon incident, the Reasonable Compromise's communication system was flooded with requests from developing civilizations seeking human protection. This is getting out of hand, P.E.T.E. announced, his holographic form now sporting what appeared to be holographic gray hairs. We've received 642 requests for protection, 3 marriage proposals addressed to Commander Martinez's singing voice, and 1 very strongly worded complaint about the lingering taste of hazelnut in the quantum substrate. Lucky, who was teaching their newest diplomatic liaison Zoop how to play poker, looked up with interest. Only 3 marriage proposals. I must be losing my touch. Zoop, a gelatinous being who had insisted on joining the crew after witnessing the Xenon incident, rippled with amusement. Their translucent form briefly displayed what might have been a royal flush before settling back into its usual amorphous shape. Perhaps it was the high note in Dancing Queen that scared them off. Everyone's a critic, Lucky sighed. What's our next crisis, Pete? P.E.T.E., sir. And we have a situation in the Gamma sector. The Council has called an emergency session regarding what they're calling the humanitarian hysteria. Dr. Nova, who had been calibrating what suspiciously looked like a weaponized espresso machine, snorted. Humanitarian hysteria? Really? That's what they're going with. Actually, P.E.T.E. corrected. The full title is The Unprecedented Crisis of Unauthorized Human Intervention in Galactic Development Leading to Widespread Hysteria and Caffeinated Spatial Anomalies. I took the liberty of abbreviating. How considerate of you, Lucky said, standing up and straightening his perpetually crooked uniform. Well, we shouldn't keep them waiting. Zoop, you're with us. I have a feeling we're going to need your unique perspective on this one." "Oh, glorious," Zoop exclaimed, their form shifting into something approximating a humanoid shape, though with perhaps a few too many arms. "Should I bring the modified toaster?" "There's a modified toaster?" Dr. Nova asked warily. "Not yet," Lucky grinned, "but I like where your head would be if you had one." Zoop. The council chamber was even more crowded than usual when they arrived. High Commander Vrax occupied his usual platform, though he was now wearing what appeared to be industrial-grade ear protection. Several new species Lucky had never seen before occupied the visitor sections, all of them waving what looked suspiciously like "We love human chaos" signs. "Order," the council president demanded, using all 4 of their arms to bang gavels simultaneously. "We are here to address the growing crisis of, is that being carrying a toaster?" Zoop, who had indeed brought a toaster despite it not existing 10 minutes ago, waved cheerfully with 3 of their spontaneously generated appendages. "That's our diplomatic aid," Lucky explained. "Don't worry about the toaster. Unless you're planning to invade someone, in which case worry extensively about the toaster." P.E.T.E. flickered anxiously. "Sir, perhaps we could refrain from making threats with unauthorized breakfast appliances." "Threats?" Lucky looked offended. "I'm simply stating facts about the defensive capabilities of properly modified kitchen equipment. It's not my fault if some people choose to interpret that as threatening." Before P.E.T.E. could categorize exactly how many regulations that statement violated, High Commander Vrax stood up, his scales shifting through various shades of outrage. "This has gone far enough. We have evidence that humans are deliberately destabilizing the Galactic Order. Our investigation has revealed a pattern of chaos that can only be intentional." "Oh, this should be good," Dr. Nova muttered. Vrax activated a holographic display, showing a series of recent human interventions: the coffee-powered rescue of the Xenon, a diplomatic incident resolved through the strategic use of bubble wrap, and what appeared to be footage of a human teaching an entire silicon-based civilization to do the Macarena as a defense mechanism. Vrax declared triumphantly. "No species could accidentally cause this much disorder." "Actually," Zoop interjected, their form rippling with barely contained enthusiasm, "that's exactly what makes humans perfect for this role. They don't just think outside the box, they forget the box exists, turn it into a hat, and somehow use it to prevent an interstellar war." The chamber erupted into chaos as various species began sharing their own stories of human intervention. The Silicon beings credited their new dance-based defense system with repelling 3 separate invasion attempts. The Xenon submitted equations proving that the lingering coffee space had actually improved their quantum technology. Even a group of energy beings admitted that bubble wrap had revolutionized their approach to diplomatic relations. But there are procedures," Vrax sputtered. "Protocols, forms to fill out and triplicate." "About that," P.E.T.E. said, and something in his tone made Lucky look at him sharply. The AI's form was standing straighter than usual, if that was possible. "I've been analyzing the pattern of human intervention, and I've come to a conclusion that I find both disturbing and fascinating." "Do tell," Lucky encouraged. "The chaos. It's not actually chaos at all. Every human solution, no matter how ridiculous it appears, follows a consistent logic: protect the vulnerable, minimize harm, and leave everyone involved slightly better off, if somewhat confused about how it happened." The chamber fell silent as P.E.T.E. projected his analysis. Graphs and charts appeared, showing how human interventions had consistently resulted in positive outcomes, even if the methods defied conventional explanation. Furthermore, P.E.T.E. continued, "I've discovered something in the Luminari message that we missed initially. A sort of mathematical joke, if you will." "A joke?" several council members asked simultaneously. "Yes. When properly decoded, the underlying equations suggest that the Luminari chose humans not despite their chaotic nature, but because of it. They understood that true protection sometimes requires thinking that no logical species would consider sensible." "Hey," Zoop exclaimed, briefly turning into what might have been an exclamation point before remembering to maintain a more diplomatic shape. "That's why my toaster has a quantum uncertainty drive." "It has a what?" Dr. Nova asked, but before anyone could answer, the chamber's security systems suddenly activated. "What's happening?" Lucky demanded. Vrax's scales turned a smug shade of violet. "What's happening is that I'm implementing Emergency Protocol 0. If the council won't see reason, then more direct measures are required. As security fields sprang up around the chamber, Lucky turned to his crew with a grin that made P.E.T.E. circuits tingle with anticipation of the paperwork to come. "Doc, how's that espresso machine coming along?" "Zoop, exactly how uncertain is that quantum drive in your toaster?" And P.E.T.E. "Start a new category of incident reports. I think we're about to invent some entirely new violations." The universe held its breath, wondering what humanity would do next. It didn't have to wait long to find out. As security fields hummed around the council chamber, Lucky Martinez did what humans do best. He improvised spectacularly. "Zoop, how good are you at making toast?" The amorphous diplomat rippled with excitement. "I have achieved quantum uncertainty in both burning and proper browning simultaneously." "Perfect. P.E.T.E. Remember that old Earth sea shanty I taught you?" The AI's hologram flickered in what might have been horror. "Sir, surely you don't mean..." "Oh, but I do. Doc, is that espresso machine ready for what I like to call a full cosmic roast?" Dr. Nova's grin matched Lucky's. "It's been ready since you started asking suspicious questions about breakfast appliances." Commander Vrax's scales shifted to a confident emerald. "Whatever you're planning won't work. These security fields are designed to contain quantum anomalies, subspace disruptions, and even temporal paradoxes." Lucky said, "But were they designed to contain poorly sung sea shanties performed by an AI with perfect pitch who's deliberately hitting all the wrong notes?" Vrax's scales went pale. "You wouldn't dare." P.E.T.E. hit it. "What do you do with a quantum physicist?" What followed was either the greatest or worst performance of Drunken Sailor ever recorded, depending on whether you asked a musician or a physicist. P.E.T.E., finally embracing the human way of problem solving, sang with mathematical precision precisely wrong in exactly the right way. The security fields began to vibrate. "Zoop," now Lucky called over the dimensional harmonics. The diplomatic aides shoved their toaster into what might have been called a pocket if their anatomy had such things. The device hummed to life, its uncertainty drive creating a field where toast both existed and didn't exist in every possible state of burnness. "You can't possibly," Vrax began. Doc Lucky shouted. "Give it the juice." Dr. Nova activated her modified espresso machine, which began pumping weapons-grade caffeine directly into the quantum substrate of space-time. The combination of P.E.T.E.'s deliberately awful singing, Zoop's quantum uncertain toast, and literally cosmic coffee created something that decades of physicists would later describe as a really interesting mess. The security fields didn't so much fail as decide they'd rather be somewhere else entirely. Several of them apparently decided to become modern art installations. "This is impossible," Vrax declared as chaos erupted around them. "You can't just. That's not how. Stop making coffee in subspace." Actually, P.E.T.E. interrupted, pausing his singing long enough to project a series of complex equations. "I believe I finally understood why the Luminari chose humanity. Observe." The holographic display showed the overlapping patterns of every ridiculous human solution, from the coffee-powered rescue to the quantum toast. When viewed together, they formed a perfect match for a symbol hidden deep in the original Luminari message. "It's a signature," Dr. Nova breathed. "Everything we've done, it's exactly what they predicted we'd do." "More than that," P.E.T.E. continued, his hologram straightening with pride. "It's proof. The Luminari didn't just choose humans, they proved mathematically that only humans could protect the galaxy properly. Because sometimes the correct solution is the one that makes absolutely no sense until it works." But, procedures," Vrax wailed as his security forces retreated from what appeared to be weaponized breakfast foods. "Oh, we have procedures," Lucky assured him. "They're just not the ones you'd expect." P.E.T.E. What's our current violation count?" 342, sir. Although I had to invent several new categories, including temporal displacement via breakfast and unauthorized music-based reality manipulation. "See? We're very organized about our chaos." As if to prove his point, Zoop's toaster chose that moment to achieve quantum enlightenment, becoming what witnesses would later describe as a metaphysical discussion about the nature of breakfast, but with more dimensional portals. The council chamber descended into a scene that would have made Salvador Dali ask for a drink. Security forces found themselves tangoing with their own quantum reflections. Several council members discovered they had accidentally learned the choreography to staying alive. And through it all, P.E.T.E. continued his mathematically imperfect sea shanty, now with accompanying quantum harmonics. Enough, the council president shouted, using all four arms to restore order by banging quantum uncertain gavels. It's clear that we have no choice but to accept the Luminari's wisdom. Humanity will be officially recognized as the galaxy's designated protectors. Really? Lucky asked. Just like that. Commander Martinez, the president, said dryly, you just defeated a security system by combining bad singing, impossible toast, and caffeinated physics. I think you've made your point. To be fair, Dr. Nova added, the toast was only mostly impossible. I call it Schrodinger's breakfast soup, announced proudly. As the chamber returned to something approximating order if order had recently attended a quantum physics rave, P.E.T.E. approached Lucky with what could only be described as respectful resignation. Sir, I believe I owe you an apology. I've spent so long trying to categorize and regulate chaos that I failed to see its value. The Luminari were right, sometimes the best solution is the one that defies proper documentation. P.E.T.E. Lucky said solemnly, that's the most beautiful thing you've ever said. Also, you missed a note in verse 3. No, sir. That was intentional. I've discovered that calculating the wrong notes is far more effective than randomly hitting them. I've never been prouder. In the days that followed, the galaxy adjusted to its new reality. The Vrax Empire, faced with the prospect of more musical physics, decided that peace was preferable to whatever humans might invent next. Developing civilizations began incorporating coffee breaks into their defense strategies. And somewhere, perhaps in another dimension entirely, the Luminari were probably watching with great amusement. You know what the best part is? Lucky asked his crew as they prepared for their next mission. We've probably inspired a whole new generation of problem solvers. Heaven help the universe, P.E.T.E. muttered. Oh no, Zoop bubbled happily. Heaven's got nothing to do with it. This is pure human chaos, and it's beautiful. As the reasonable compromise set course for their next adventure, trailing quantum coffee rings and the faint echoes of deliberately imperfect sea shanties, Lucky couldn't help but smile. The Luminari had been right, the galaxy didn't need perfect protectors. It needed humans in all their chaotic, coffee-powered, reality-bending glory. And if anyone had a problem with that, well, there was always interpretive dance.